This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the latest edition of Sundays with Dominic and Vito. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Churco, alongside nobody on this week's edition of the pod, as I am riding solo and looking to talk to all of you about the latest with sports, despite the coronavirus pandemic striking down harshly, obviously, on all the variety of sports leagues around the country, and nobody currently is playing. Well, the UFC obviously just fought over the weekend, actually on Saturday night, and my buddies and I actually checked it out for the first time, well, for me, and I'm not a big UFC or fighting guy, and just seeing guys go at it and bloody each other, but I did tune in on Saturday night. It was pay-per-view and a little bit of illegal streaming on my end to view that fight, the main card of the UFC set of bouts on this past Saturday night. So did get the chance to tune into that. Really not up my alley, as I love my baseball, I love my football, I love my basketball, and all of it's been taken away, and rightfully so, because of the dangers and the current conditions in the nation with the coronavirus pandemic and this virus that has struck a chord, with so many different families throughout the country, affected people's lives economically and socially, mentally, emotionally, and obviously in a big way health-wise as well. Now, 80,000 people have died from the coronavirus. So all these people's lives throughout the country, have been affected, and sports leagues obviously have been subsequently as well. The four main ones right now not going on because of the pandemic. Major League Baseball would have already started their season. The NBA would be in the playoffs. The NHL would be in the playoffs. The NFL would not be going on right now, but you would have had a draft that wasn't virtual. You would have had a live draft happen in Las Vegas in late April. Obviously, it had to occur then, because of the pandemic, virtually. And it was a terrific success, a ratings bonanza for the NFL. And the league looked really good in being able to pull it off in a virtual format. And not a lot of technological snafus. So a lot of good for the NFL on that end with their draft last April. Now you fast forward to these other leagues, and the NBA's draft has already been delayed. You have that. No NBA season, no playoffs right now in the NBA going on. No playoffs in the NHL, and neither sports league actually concluded its regular season. So you would assume, and what I've heard regarding the NHL specifically, they're still going to play the remainder of their regular season before they even get into the postseason, if that season is resumed there in the National Hockey League. Now, in the National Basketball Association, you also have a factor where all of the seats in the two conferences weren't decided for the postseason, when the league had to obviously just delay itself, stop, and because of Rudy Gobert testing positive for COVID-19. Ever since then, the NBA has yet to resume and is still looking into getting the proper testing and all of that in order to resume play. Then also looking into the different cities throughout the nation and different facilities they can resume play in as well. And there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding all these different leagues and where they're going to play the remainder of or start their seasons, if they do actually resume their seasons, or in the case of Major League Baseball, start their season, as they were still in spring training and would have to actually get back to that and go through then all the formality with spring training before they even get into their regular season still. So you have all of that with Major League Baseball, and Major League Baseball subsequently hasn't had anything really to show for the 2020 year at this point. So a lot of uncertainty surrounding the league and where they're going to play and how many different cities throughout the country. Will they play in all of the 30 Major League Baseball teams' ballparks, actually, which has been discussed recently. And the latest proposal from Major League Baseball, and now the players will get the chance to look at it on Tuesday of this week. But the proposal consists of the following stipulations: an 82-game regional schedule in universal DH, meaning the designated hitter being used in both leagues, even in the National League where the pitcher does get the chance to bat typically. It has for many, many years now. But the American League has had the DH now, And the NL, in this format with this kind of a season, would also institute the DH in their lineups on a game-to-game basis. So that would be a universal DH from league to league. And then an 82-game regional schedule for all of MLB's 30 major league clubs. And that would consist of the AL Central playing the NL Central, the AL East playing the NL East, and the AL West playing the NL West's respective ball clubs. So from our angle as Detroit fans here living in the state of Michigan, for me in the beautiful city of Clinton Township, that would consist of the Detroit Tigers playing then clubs from the NL Central subsequently. So you see a lot more of the Pittsburgh Pirates, who they play, seems like, on an annual basis in at least 2 to 4, well, 4 games for one series. A lot of times they've had it where it's been 2 in Detroit, 2 in Pittsburgh. You've seen that happen as well in recent memory between the two clubs. So you'll see a lot more of that, and the Tigers still playing their American League Central Division foes, which wasn't the case with another proposed plan or two in the past. So this one specifically still would adhere to those conditions of the Tigers playing their respective foes in the American League Central Division, plus those teams from the NL Central for an 82-game regular season. Now, not many of us as Tigers fans and pundits alike are expecting the Tigers to do very well, even in a shortened campaign where they play the 82 games. Pretty much just one half of a season. They would play one half of baseball, and that would be it for the entirety of the 2020 campaign. So there is that stipulation with the proposal. That's just one of the things, though. Another one of the major stipulations from this new proposal from Major League Baseball and its 30 owners is having a 30-man active roster with a 20-player taxi squad. And when I say taxi squad, that might sound funny, but the meaning behind that is that because of the virus and players, in case of players testing positive, if and when they do, you would have this taxi squad of guys, 20 guys comprising this taxi squad that would fill in the void when guys would test positive for the coronavirus. So once again, with all these different sports leagues and any kind of sports league out there, pro or not, if and when it does resume play, you got to have the testing in place. Got to have the testing in place. All these test kits have to be proficient too. Okay, so the issues with the testing have to be rectified. There has to be the available testing. And with all of these pro athletes and non-pro athletes, you have to have the testing readily available from team to team and from player to player, as would be the case with Major League Baseball. And it would be testing, I believe, even on a daily basis. Meaning if a guy were to test positive on one day, that guy would be gone for a certain period of time, a good few weeks. And somebody else from that taxi club would be called up, in so many words, and take the place of that guy that tested positive for the virus. That's another major stipulation here in this proposal for Major League Baseball and its 30 owners. The third stipulation of 4 that I'm bringing up here would be 14 teams would make the postseason. So, typically you have the 3 division winners and 2 wild card winners. So 5 plus a 1-game playoff, eliminating 1 and making it 4-team playoff in each the National and American League. So now this would be, from my knowledge, 7 teams per league making it in to the big dance, per se, at the end of the regular season in 2020. I can understand that with the shortened season, and teams that are supposed to be good might not be as good, and other teams might overachieve and sneak into the postseason subsequently. As a Tigers fan at heart, I'm hoping for that. Probably a pipe dream, though, with their current roster and what it looks like going into this supposed 2020 campaign. Anyways, more teams would get into the postseason. And great for those teams' fans. I mean, obviously, it's all about the fans, too. And more players get in, and I guess could make some more money by playing some playoff games. Now, the biggest issue with this, the largest one that probably won't go too well with the players when they vote on this proposal on Tuesday, is the 50-50 revenue share. To me, that's a disgrace. It's a slap in the face of the players and something the players won't agree to in majority in order to get this proposal passed. And now, anyways, with a lot of proposals in life, right, sports or non-sports related, there's going to be the going between the two sides, or the back and forth and the counter proposals, and maybe counter proposals aplenty. So we could see that being the case as well with Major League Baseball when it does get to the table with the players and have the players look over this given proposal. So I see that being the case here, and that being the biggest red flag for them and flaw in this proposal sent into the players by Major League Baseball and its 30 owners once again. This is something the players largely will not agree to. It will not get passed, and there will have to be subsequently a counter proposal, in my opinion. Because for them to have to agree to this as in adhering to this condition after it was said at first they would receive prorated salaries for the duration of a shortened campaign. This season, via this proposal, would also be shortened. And it kind of has to be at this point. You're playing with a different playing field, no pun intended, because of the virus and the conditions with the no fans. And you're starting late, a delayed start to the campaign, so you have to have a shortened season subsequently, and different rules and regulations, or let's say provisions, right, that you play with. So once again, a different playing field. And with that being said, well, the revenue to divvy it all up and make it fair for each team, from team to team, well, these owners now have come to the table and come up with this proposal where the players are only going to get a 50-50 share in the revenue for the entirety of the campaign. So this will be a major stipulation I don't think the players will agree to, and that's why I think this will be the holdup and the reason why the players don't go forward and sign on the dotted line regarding this proposal. So there will be more back and forth, and we'll see how long it is prolonged. But there has been also a proposal I know brought up, and I think even the case with this is they would want to start play sooner than later for the regular season. So still have their spring training games played out, the ones they didn't finish up, and I think give it 2 weeks to get the guys back up to speed, get their bodies fresh and ready for the entirety of what would be then, once again, an 82-game regular season. So you need those spring training games to get the guys back into shape once again and, back into the right playing condition for a regular season. So that's all fine. That's all dandy with me. And with that being said, it looks like Major League Baseball is tentatively looking at a start date of, well, not July 4th, maybe, but the weekend of July 4th, or let's just say July 4th itself, starting on the nation's Independence Day. I think would be a great idea and could lead to a ratings bonanza for Major League Baseball and with all of its teams, even the subpar squads that have nothing to play for this season, such as our Detroit Tigers here, with little to play and big time in a rebuilding mode. They're not going to be competitive game in, game out, but you still want live sports, real sports, not esports, not archive sports, games from yesteryear. We want live action, games happening right now in front of us, even with us not being allowed to attend the games as fans, but to watch live sporting events and live Major League Baseball. I mean, there's people like me as a fan of Major League Baseball that is dying on the inside and dying to see that happen, to grasp, to get some kind of live action. And Major League Baseball could be the first sport to return to action, starting its season officially on the 4th of July, or real close to that, to start off the month of July. So I think that would be a beautiful thing for Major League Baseball, the right plan to pursue, and it could lead to, once again, most importantly for Major League Baseball and all of its owners and players, especially its owners, a ratings bonanza. But the biggest holdup back to this proposal for a lot of the owners and why, well, the owners want to get to playing baseball, but have maybe are a little bit hesitant with this kind of baseball playing without the spectators is that very thing. With no spectators, nobody going through admission, paying for tickets and actually, paying for concessions at the stands, and the team's not being able to make money that way with the spectators in the stands. Because of all that added up, the owners are going to lose out ultimately with their revenue. They're not going to make the money they would if the fans were in the stands, right? And they actually have paid for their tickets. We know that before the season even occurs, you pay for your season ticket packages. So teams will have to actually dictate whether or not they give now refunds or future credits to these people that had bought tickets and cannot attend games now. So I guess ultimately teams could still lose out money on that end and lose out on a lot of money, even more than just the money they would make at the concessions, right? When the fans are in the stands and walk over to get some food or to buy a jersey or buy a baseball mitt, a pennant. I have a ton of pennants, by the way, in my room. So I would hope there's still some young kids out there and just baseball fans in general that like their pennants, because I definitely do, and it's all decked out throughout my room. But anyways, I digress, as my point is owners are going to have to deal with, suck it up, and lose out on some money this year because the fans are not going to be there. It's not safe for them to be in the stands, so they're not going to be there. And even if you were to delay the season, really delay it, I think even later in the summer, they're not going to be allowed to be in the stands because it's not safe. It's not safe conditions right now for them, and perhaps it won't even be in the fall when baseball would be playing its postseason and the NFL would be starting a play. It might not be safe. Dr. Anthony Fauci has said so. Others, in the CDC, the World Health Organization, keep saying that this pandemic could definitely be prolonged and will last until the fall, more than likely, too, and maybe come with a second wave of it that could be even worse. And I know the virus can mutate and become something worse, and maybe it just stays the same with the second wave that comes in the fall, but still the point is the virus will still be there, will still be a threat and cause many people to get sick and many deaths as well. So more people, unfortunately, guys, are going to die from this virus. It's a real issue. It's not a hoax. It's going to be here for a while. It's not going to just wash away miraculously. So, to maintain a safe environment at the highest level possible, fans are not going to be allowed once again to enter these ballparks, to enter these stadiums of NFL teams, of other pro sports teams. It's just not going to happen in 2020, and it's for the well-being of the fans. It's for the best interest out of the best interest of these fans. And you gotta look at what are the conditions with this virus. Is it even feasible to allow fans to enter into the ballpark with the virus still lingering? And the most simplistic answer possible is that no, clear-cut no, it's not safe. And that's why if these leagues even start or resume their respective campaigns, if they do in 2020, there's going to have to be a ton of testing available day to day for these players, these officials, the refs, the umpires in Major League Baseball, for all of those associated with the games day to day and whatever sports league it may be. You have to get everybody tested. There has to be some kind of testing system in place that is readily accessible and readily proficient. If it's not effective / proficient, you can't have these leagues resume play. It is not going to happen without the readily available testing and the proficient testing available day to day for all of these players in the NHL, in the NBA, in Major League Baseball, in the NFL when it does play in the fall. And then, how about all the coaches? Once again, the aforementioned refs, the baseball umps, all of those individuals also have to be tested. So it really does. As I wrap all this up about the coronavirus and how it's impacted all these different pro sports leagues and sports in general, for any of these leagues to resume play or to start play for the first time in 2020, there has to be that readily available testing from team to team, player to player. And if there isn't, it will not be safe for play to resume. And that is just... those are the conditions out there right now. That is what we're playing with, no pun intended, when it comes to these different pro sports leagues. And then you look into the fall for collegiate football, and the universities have to be back in class, more than likely, for a season to occur. Or you're going to have a lot of teams, at the very least, not even play in 2020. And that's why now you see with collegiate football, you see with high school football in the state of Michigan, with the MHSAA, they're considering spring football. And just because, more than likely, it's going to be safer with the virus come 2021 and in the spring of 2021 than it is right now as we eventually get to the fall. I was going to say as fall approaches here. Well, it's not approaching. We've got the summer coming up first. When the virus, it won't wash away by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, it won't wash away miraculously. It'll still be here, but maybe with the warmer temps, it'll die down a bit. But that second wave is more than likely coming, once again, from all these experts that have studied the virus, talked about it. They have said more than likely there's a second wave of it coming in the fall. So once again, it will affect the NFL season, will affect the collegiate football season if there is one. And that's why you hear more and more conversation about the college football head honchos at the NCAA level. And you hear of the head honchos too, and the upper level individuals at the MHSAA also considering delaying their season until the spring. And that's because, once again, they have to take the health and well-being of their athletes, of their student athletes. Remember, they are students first. They are young individuals, young men and women that aren't fully developed, aren't adults yet, aren't being paid for their services, aren't being paid to play. They aren't. These high schoolers aren't. These collegiate athletes aren't. Even the college football stars, the best of the best in the FBS of the Power 5 conferences, in the Big Ten, and the other big-time conferences, they're not paid to play either. And because that is the case, well, you can't force these guys back onto the playing field. You can't risk them getting sick, and especially because it is a case with pro sports too, and all of those athletes. But they're being paid millions of dollars. Some of them, upwards of tens of millions of dollars per year, too. So they're making big bucks, and they're paid to play. But the provision is, with NCAA sports and high school sports, the athletes aren't paid. It might not be paid for a long, long time. It might never be paid. Obviously, in high school sports, you're never going to see these guys get paid, girls and boys. But collegiately, there's always been the talk about maybe players getting paid to play eventually. And maybe there will be a provision passed, some, legislation passed at some point and by the NCAA specifically to make it happen. But in 2020, it's not going to be the case. So while this virus is happening, is readily ongoing, leading to unsafe conditions for the players, you need, not only the testing, but also the safest conditions possible. And you can't guarantee that with the virus. And that's why, once again, the higher-ups at the NCAA, at the MHSAA, are considering delaying their fall football season to the spring in 2021. When hopefully, it's a lot safer playing conditions for all at the NCAA level, but also at the high school level throughout the state of Michigan, but also throughout the entire U.S. of A. And guys, with all of that being said, that's why, once again, we also always have to remember health and safety first. They really go hand in hand and have to during this pandemic, which has affected millions and millions of lives. Once again, I believe the death toll now is at 80,000 plus throughout the U.S. The testing is still not up to par to where it should be city to city or state to state throughout the country. We need all of that picking up. We need all of that picking up because of not just the athletes, but the average Joes, you and I, as I'm talking to you and dealing with my family, thinking of all of my loved ones, including my friends and all of your guys' family members and friends. We need all of this rectified and in place for us to stay safe, to remain safe moving forward until the end of this year. Because once again, this virus doesn't seem like it's going to wash away anytime soon. It might never until 2021. So we need everybody to be safe, right? To take precaution and to keep praying for an end to this virus ultimately too, and hoping for that vaccine to be here sooner than later as well. So that's something big to take into account here as we talk on this week's episode of Sundays with Dominic and Vito. And guys, I'll leave you with this, a little bit of dialogue and a recap of mine regarding the latest episodes of The Last Dance from this past Sunday night. And what I was able to encounter for the first time is really diving deep into Michael Jordan and the aggressive competitor that he was during his playing days with the Chicago Bulls. And then he did play a little bit when I was a young lad with the Washington Wizards as well towards the end of his career in the NBA. But this is all obviously about his 6 titles that he won with the Chicago Bulls, the 2 separate three-peats that he had, and the retirement in between where he did pursue a minor league baseball career with the Chicago White Sox. And was never quite good enough to cut the mustard seed there as a baseball player. Supposedly pursued that, though, as it was a dream of his dad's for Michael to try out baseball. And Michael Jordan ended up giving it a try and ultimately didn't fail, but decided, hey, I'm a great basketball player. I'm the best of all time. I'm the GOAT. So he went back into basketball and then won another 3 championships in a row, and then retired a second time, and obviously played with the Wizards, like I said already, in the early 2000s, then retired a third time. So he's done it all at this point. Did it all as a player, and I love finding out about the fact that this guy always had some kind of motivational factor, right, that he played with. Some kind of incentive in his head that made him go out there and want to just burn you, take on the opponent and just kill them on the floor and score 30, 40, 50 points against them. And especially if you had said something negative about him or dirty that he didn't like. So when you went after him with the trash talk or did something where he didn't like what you did on the court against him, well, you were going to have to hear about it and really feel it in a big-time fashion the following game. And we saw that with B.J. Armstrong in a series against the Hornets back in the day, in the 90s, where B.J., a former member of the Chicago Bulls, a guy that Jordan played with for a while there in Chi-Town, ended up joining the Hornets then and having this big Game 2, I believe it was, in a playoff series. He really burned and torched the Bulls and went off. Had a great game. Well, after that, Jordan came out and made sure he was defending and stopping B.J. Armstrong at all costs. So really took it out on the former Birmingham Brother Rice product. A guy that had a great high school basketball career, obviously, in the state of Michigan, and was a pretty darn good player in the NBA as well and had a long career. A smaller dude, a guard that could score a bit as well in his heyday. Well, Michael Jordan then took it upon himself in that playoff series to be the stopper of B.J. Armstrong. And boy, did he get it done. He limited B.J. extremely, made sure B.J. couldn't do anything against him. And that was the beauty of Michael Jordan, the competitor, as he always had a vendetta, had something in him that just burned at him, right, and really got him going. And it led to these ultra-productive games. And a lot of times it came obvious in the biggest moments of playoff games, too. So in crunch time, when his team needed him to step up defensively, offensively, to make a big-time shot down the stretch, Jordan valiantly came through and made it happen for the Bulls when they needed it the most. And always, once again, played with that fire inside his belly and with that vendetta because of what somebody said or did to him on the floor, even in practice. Even if it was in practice, he would take it as a slight and then take it out against you in the following game. And once again, B.J. Armstrong had to deal with that big time, and he got burned in that following game. The game after B.J. really went off, had himself a game, won a game really for his Hornet squad. Jordan took it into his own hands, once again defended and stopped B.J. in that following game, and really went off. And that was really Michael Jordan, and that's what I learned about him in the past 2 episodes of The Last Dance documentary on ESPN this past Sunday night. A terrific documentary that has also documented the Bad Boys Pistons and how the Bad Boys Pistons really got under the skin of Michael Jordan and those Bulls teams back in the late 80s and made Jordan work harder and get bigger and better, work out, hit the weights and get just bulky, right, and just get ripped and bigger than he ever was. So the Bad Boys Pistons would get under his skin, and it made Jordan a tougher and a better all-around player. A guy that eventually rose to the heights of an NBA champion, and a guy that won not just one, not just two, not just 3, but 6 NBA championships. And maybe not always against the best competition in the Eastern Conference or even in the finals from the Western Conference. But he always got it done and got it done in crunch time and was the guy that always took heed to when somebody said something negatively about him, when somebody went at him and called him out for this or that. Jordan, he took that to heart big time and made sure you paid for it in the following game and maybe in the entirety of a playoff series. So that was very interesting and really fascinating for me to consume throughout the course of this past weekend in those 2 episodes that just aired from the Last Dance documentary. Once again, a terrific documentary that if you haven't watched it yet, make sure to binge watch it now, catch up on it, and especially to those episodes, once again, the ones on the Bad Boys Pistons, but also on the Worm, Dennis Rodman. You got to check that out as well, because Dennis Rodman, man, and seeing how colorful, truly with the hair, with everything, his color and candor off the floor as well, and his partying in Vegas, and how he went to Vegas, was allowed to by the Bulls at one point, and came back, and it was no big deal. Wasn't suspended. The team knew about it, let him do it, just let him get some stuff off his chest, I guess, right, and air it all out, and then in return, played at a high level, too, when he did return. So the Bulls added him. He tormented the Bulls. Scottie Pippen just bullied him specifically when the Bad Boys Pistons had the number of Jordan's Bulls. And then in the 90s, once again, Rodman joined the Bulls and helped them win those other championships. And Jordan, once again, because of the presence of Rodman, was able to win another 3 there after his first retirement. So, interesting. Just a ton of interesting stuff about Rodman, about the Bad Boys Pistons, about Phil Jackson, about him hallucinating. We learned that about Phil Jackson. He really was out there, man, and had some good times back in the day when he was younger and playing himself with the New York Knicks. So a ton of interesting anecdotes shared throughout the course of the Last Dance documentary. Once again, well worth it to tune into. And guys, with that being said, that's all she wrote on this week's edition of Sundays with Dominic and Vito. It's been a pleasure speaking to all of you as usual. Hope you enjoy what I had to say about Major League Baseball, its proposal to return to play coming up in early July. Also about the other sports leagues, whether or not they're going to resume and how they're going to look when they do start playing, such as the NFL with no spectators in the stands, and for all the different pro sports leagues out there. There's going to be no spectators. And if the spectators do return by the end of 2020, guess what, guys? It's not going to be the way that it used to be. There's going to be social distancing enacted. And there should be. There should be. And the wearing of masks. You're going to have to wear a mask as well to be out there in the public setting, in a sports venue, at an NBA arena before the end of this year, if you're even allowed to, at a Major League Baseball stadium, if you're even allowed to be in one of those stadiums by the end of 2020 as well. It's just the times that we're living in, and once again, it's ultimately to ensure safety at the highest level. Guys, continue to stay safe, continue to stay healthy, and I'll talk to you again next week for another fine edition of Sundays with Dominic and Vito. Adios for now.